Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for the late start, but please stay with us. We are going into our plenary at this time. First of all, I'd like to thank the Caribbean Academy for hosting these very important discussions, presentations, contributions. Very, very important they are. The panelists who made this happen, we thank you very much for the time that you spent and the effort and energy that you have put in. I'd also like to thank the Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Rocky Mead, for being a key ingredient in all of this. I'm stretching across for my little black book. I've been taking copious notes, both on my laptop and in my book since yesterday. And I think some of those will come up for discussion. We are going to be looking, first of all, at the section dealing with the and I should have online, I'm not certain if Dr. Christopher Gale is there, Dr. Christopher Charles, Dr. Herbert Gale, and Major Blackwood should be there as well in this to do with security. I want to, Brigadier Raj Mason, are you there? Is Brigadier Raj Mason there? The persons for security here, Dr. Herbert Gale, I'm not seeing Dr. Herbert Gale, neither am I seeing Christopher Charles. A long day, yes, I understand. A long 2 days, very demanding, and there are other things that people have to do. Security. Perhaps we could look at the economy, then go back to security, because Lisa Suarez is here, so we could start with the economy. And is Captain David Ching Fong still with us? I'm looking for you. David Ching Fong. Dr. Dana Morris Dixon, did I just see you? Yes?
How are you?
There. So let us start with the economy, because most persons who have to do with the security sector are not here. There are many things that was said yesterday about the economy, and I reflected on the media wrap. Please, could we ask that everybody just mute your microphones until you're ready to speak? There's a horrible feedback that we're getting. Yes, so Lisa, we have to be moving, people have to live, people have to eat, people have to be able to send their children to school. The farmers need to be able to sell their produce, tourism needs to be up and going. Yes, the economy is important. And you'll recall that Dr. Andre Horton spoke about the gig economy and the fact that we need to think more of that in those terms in many ways for things to happen. So I'm going to ask for Dana Morris Dixon to just share your comments in this plenary in terms of, did it satisfy for you, the symposium, what you had hoped it would, and what were the issues that came out of it that you think are very important that we would need to reflect on and work on?
Right, thank you, Faye. It's lovely to be led in by you. In terms of the economy group that just met, it had wonderful energy in it and a lot of input from the participants. And I have to thank all the participants there, especially Lisa Suarez Lewis, who did a fantastic presentation that framed a lot of it for us. And also we had Captain, is Captain on? I was trying to look if I saw him on still, but I think he is off. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what we came up with from that committee, and Lisa is here so she can also fill in. We were looking at resilience. How do you get economic resilience? And that resilience word is really all about how you respond to a shock, whether it is COVID as a pandemic, whether it is a hurricane, an earthquake. How do you build a resilient economy that can withstand all of that. And we're seeing with COVID that there's a lot of stress on Jamaican economy, which translates stress on people. So what we looked at in terms of outcomes, and that's what this conference was all about. I remember when Captain said to me that she wanted to have this be policy driven and outcome driven. That's what our panel did. We actually were looking at what are the policy choices that need to be made at this moment. And framing everything was about this picture of a new Jamaica, the new picture. What are we going to create? How are we going to create it? Recognizing that the COVID moment gives us a time to stop and look at what is happening. And COVID highlights a lot of issues in our economy, such as the inequality that we see in our economy, the fact that we are dependent on only a few sectors, and the fact that we are being left behind in terms of the rest of the world. And so it's a moment to stop and look at how do we change that? How do we change that picture? And some of the suggestions that came out of the committee, or as importantly, that digital economy and creating Jamaica into more of a digital space. So when we look at this from banking to all other aspects of government, we're seeing it slowly, jam COVID, so on. And looking at education was another big one, and leadership, and how we bring a whole of government approach with civil society and having many task forces like these looking and confronting on the problems that we face and how we move forward. We're also suggested looking at diversity.
May I ask you to talk a little bit? The bandwidth is a
okay. All right.
The bandwidth is a little unstable, so I'm going to ask you, if you could, and also Lisa, when we speak to the economy, if you could focus a little bit on agriculture, which is critical to a number of people, to their survival, their existence, and also to look at rural folk, particularly those who are involved in agriculture and agriculture-related business.
All right. Faye, can you tell me if you're hearing me or if the bandwidth is still an issue?
Did you get that?
I did. Can you hear me? Lisa,
yes, it's a big issue, and we're very sorry. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you now.
Okay, great.
There's a bit of a delay. Did you hear the request I made of you?
I heard.
All right, and Lisa is there as well. So because very often, I'm sorry, I'm a rural girl. Very often I find when we think about the economy, we think about urban, we think about the things, yes, that are macro, but we need to chisel down to the micro and agriculture and those other related businesses that country folk live by every day.
Yeah. All right. So agriculture, absolutely important. One of the, oh, Lisa, go ahead. Let's see if you can hear you better, Lisa.
Right. Well, no, I was only typing it so you could see it. Say it may be bandwidth on your side, but one of the things, certainly agriculture is critical, and I'm going to give you two angles. When you have the degree of joblessness of 350,000 out in the tourism sector, they can't eat breeze. You know, I always say it that way. So in a sense, even policies like repatriation, where people can actually go back to the country, start some farming, be with family in a way where they actually can participate at a household family level, is part of a breakthrough idea to be able to have that at the rural level. So Faye, you're right, the participation has to allow people to actually do that. But we also have to do it with some new technology. So if we could get Jacovid doing things where anywhere in the island we had that GIS kind of data to help us, then we have to use the technology where even small farmers are getting help. And we have to marry the two now. So that's there. Plus also Jumper from a policy point of view has already articulated publicly that the agriculture has to be looked on completely differently, but we have to do more things. Crop insurance, trade support, because they're not bankable, and because they weren't bankable, agriculture fell down in the ranking. So agriculture is a big part of the economy. There's a debate about whether we have, you know, agriculture when it's so susceptible to shocks, I actually don't think we have a choice. We have to do and. We don't live in the world of or anymore. So it's a very big employer. We need jobs. We need growth. And of course, we spoke about cannabis and other things as well. Specialty agriculture is a huge thing. Blue Mountain Coffee, nobody else does that in the rest of the world. We can command prices. We can create brands from it. So agriculture is something that can be integrated, as you said, Faye, from at the household level in the most rural parish. They'll produce the best yams for us to be able to get with a supply chain, which we don't have now, to be able to get to export to New York, where they are dying for mangoes, dying for these things. So it's the supply chain, the whole works. Agriculture is king.
Could I just make a point? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Who is this? Who is this?
This is Omar Chedo.
Just before you speak, Omar, just give me 10 seconds. I would like, in fact, to recognize that when we speak of agriculture, yes, there is coffee, but there's also ginger and there's pimento. And we really need to recognize the value of those as well as we go forward and find a way to empower people to get involved in those things. So pimento takes time, but ginger doesn't take the number of years that pimento would take. Yes, Omar, please go ahead.
Yes, just to inform all the participants that an agribusiness, 5-year agribusiness plan was recently developed. It's going through the approval process now and will be made public shortly. So many consultations were held through the Ministry of Industry, Agriculture, Fisheries, and Commerce. I'm sorry, MICAF. I think I might have gotten the name wrong. So they consulted with all the stakeholders in the agricultural sector and the agro-processing sector. And so these recommendations will be made public shortly.
All right. And remember that so many of our senior citizens are involved in agriculture. We would like to attract more younger people to agriculture, and that happens through the 4-H clubs, and to a lesser extent to the JS, because the JS is managing and RAD and entities like that. But don't forget the role of senior citizens. They pretty much hold this thing together for the most part. All right, there is something in the chat. Let me see. Jampro and other players can help to create specialty brands for Jamaica so we can unlock the value from the household level to the national level. Yes, that is what I am agreeing with, Lisa. Thank you for that. Very, very important. All right, do we have any other comments on the economy before we move back to security? Would anyone like to comment? Food security is critical for resilience. And I would know, let me tell you something, you know, when I don't start me out America, me grew up and turned young adult in the 70s. And if we did only follow certain things in the 70s, grow what you eat and eat what you grow, it's not new, okay? And if we had understood it and followed it, then we would not be in the dilemma that we are now. I'm sorry, but everything comes back to everything, if you know what I mean. What you said then?
I agree.
You agree? Seriously? Okay, and thank you for that, Miss Camille, because me and you retire roughly the same time, so we're roughly the same age, so we have the same memories and knowledge, you know what I mean? Anyway, we've got to move on. So meaning we have to move on from, yes, we fell down and didn't carry through with a number of things, but we are here now and we must find our footing, or if we don't find our footing, dog, nyam, we suffer, and it's a mongrel with mange. You understand? So we have to move on. So you've never heard that one? The second part of that is my coinage. So you have to understand, I'm into my culture big time. Let us know, even though this section is dealing with security, it doesn't mean that the persons who are not directly involved with security should not participate, because security is not just about keeping our borders safe and secure, making sure that there's no upheaval, ensuring that guns are much more than that. So I'd like to know, Brigadier Mason, Raj Mason, you're there, and so too is Major Blackwood. So we're going to talk about security and how do we put the lid on the discussions from yesterday and today on this matter of security. Let's begin with Brigadier Raj Mason. Brigadier, are you there? Yes, I see you coming up.
Hi, good afternoon all.
Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
I'm going back to my notes from yesterday when you spoke, and I took copious notes. And you spoke about the five. You spoke about the 5 factors: public trust, collaboration of resources, and that will be strategy, poverty, absence of social safety nets, and the capabilities. It's now yours. Expand.
Okay. If I should, if I would wish to use this forum to just focus on one issue that tends to get disaggregated in somewhat in these discussions, and that one is the issue of poverty. Recently, I would have attended a course overseas, and I recall a general from Afghanistan who described poverty as, in fact, as a threat. And all the social issues that we face, that pervades now, it has a basis of which derives from poverty. And I really believe that it needs to become much more the focus when we deal with matters of security, matters of the economy, and certainly matters in this COVID environment where the vulnerable people are challenged. Because if you should look at the landscape, Jamaica has 19% of persons below the poverty line. And this stretches across the length and breadth of the country, totaling some 500,000 people who are below the poverty line. And this certainly has a multiplier effect on all aspects of life, all opportunities, all the victims, the perpetrators. It has a foundation in poverty. And so I would like to invite us to look at this variable, because the systems that we have in place, it is all aimed at our systems of taxation, our systems of affording opportunities. It is all aimed at trying to give opportunity to persons who are from poverty-stricken situations. If you look at the murderous communities, over 75% of murders are committed from communities where persons are below living below the poverty rate. And so I would just like to invite us to focus on that one, because it pervades and it affects. It is the heart of the discussions around security.
Brigadier, thank you for that. And by the way, my bandwidth is better now. Is Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis Cooper? I'm seeing her name there. I hope she's there, because I want to bring her into the discussion at this level. But Brigadier, I want to expand on this discussion about poverty and take it into another place. And you said poverty is a threat, and I agree with you, but I want to look at, and this is why I'm asking Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis to join us, poverty of thought, poverty of knowledge, poverty of schooling, poverty of expression. And just allow me 15 seconds or so to deal with poverty of expression. And I'm speaking now through the creative expressive process. I remember speaking with the late Wycliffe Bennett some years ago, and he made a very profound comment. His comment was this: if we don't build more spaces for performance, we better build more spaces for prisons. Okay? Poverty of thinking. So this poverty of which you speak, for me, is very, very wide-ranging. Is Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis, are you there? I see her name there. I don't know if she's there. but I would love her input. But if there's anyone else who would like to comment on this basis of poverty as a threat, and it is indeed a threat, but we need to, for me, we need to widen this thing of poverty.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment.
Who is this now?
Omar Cheddar.
Yes. Just let me ask again, Reverend Dr. Martin Lewis, are you there? If you're there, then join us in this part of the discussion. Omar, please go ahead.
Yes, I was involved in a downtown Kingston redevelopment project initiative, which is still ongoing. It was being led by Dr. Hutchison, former head of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, who is now living in the US. But the philosophical basis of the initiative was that instead of looking at poverty, we would look at the wealth creating assets of downtown Kingston and mobilize initiatives around these wealth creating assets. So I think we have to be careful when we speak about poverty, not to focus on poverty, but look at what are the resources that we have that can create wealth. And so we shouldn't go in looking to solve poverty, but to be focusing on how we can create wealth.
That's an interesting input, but you haven't commented on any of the things I raised.
Okay, could you remind me?
I am saying that we have a poverty of thought, poverty of knowledge, poverty of thinking, poverty of expression, poverty of schooling, and different from education, the one that you get in the classroom, that's schooling, or the virtual classroom. And by the way, while Omar is attempting to deal with that, Marjorie, I hope the administrator has now unmuted you so you can comment. Is that you there, Reverend?
You can hear me?
Yes, I am hearing you. Would you like to comment?
Okay.
Did you hear my comments earlier?
I did. I've been hearing everything.
Right. We're going to allow you about a minute or two because we do have other persons who'd like to comment. And then we have the other section that we need to look at, which is health.
I think your idea about poverty of thought and all of those things are, that idea is important. I think, however, it has to be integrated. And again, this is a place where spiritual spaces can assist because, for example, nutrition, violence adversely affect the development of children's brains. And if social support isn't there, and the family is under a lot of stress, then it makes life a little bit more difficult. What I did. I think on my wish list, every child in Jamaica would be linked to a Sunday school or a Sabbath school or some good program for children, because those spaces are spaces that can help with how people think, can provide added social support, and can present nurturing environments that help to mitigate some of the other factors. But if children and people generally only have a small base of social support, a very narrow set of experiences that are negative, then I think the outcome can be much more difficult. But it is not to say that that by itself, without economic support, is going to be enough. But within the churches, you can find some of that support. I know of churches, for example, that have been doing small business development with their members, that have education funds, that have dance groups, to go to the stuff you were talking about, dance groups, music groups, where people can express themselves and ventilate their emotions, as well as have the kind of social support, encouragement, affirmation, and link to resources that perhaps they would not be able to get, and just to have a different perspective on life, to just know that other things are possible.
Indeed. And let me just ask, Major Blackwood, are you there still? And do you have an input before we move to health? Let me just share something with I know that people like Lisa would know this and Dana would know this and many of you, but I just want to state it.
Here.
Yeah, I'm coming to you shortly. When we speak of, for example, the entertainment industry and using it very broadly, very widely, I just want to remind us that the people you see on stage, they're just the outside, the exterior of the motor vehicle. There's the engine, there's the undercarriage, there's the trunk, there is the interior with the upholstery, right? I want to say this because people don't understand hundreds, sometimes thousands of people benefit from an entertainment event. The person who washed the car, the person who cooked the roast corn and the crab, the person who provides accommodation. So let us understand that entertainment has taken a big hit. Yes, tourism has taken a hit, but there's also entertainment at the hotels and in tourism, a big hit. And it is going to be very difficult. As an actor, I've been thinking, how is it ever going to work its way out? Yes, we have to do things virtually and the rest of it, but it's an interactive space in which we operate as entertainers, whether you are coffee or you're doing a play. It's interactive. You get close to people. We have to think now, this exceptional thinking, this extraordinary thinking that Lisa speaks of. But then it's going to take more time for those persons who are in entertainment to recover. And then you find that, and I'm not just speaking about entertainment here, if people don't have the wherewithal to live, then crime increases. Major Blackwood?
I'm right here, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, man, I'm hearing you go.
Okay. So yesterday I was the organizer behind the scenes, and I just wanted to highlight the two philosophical standpoints that the panelists came with. And in the analysis, we saw where the point was made that when things lie outside of the state, they tend to be direct and more structural. But when there are issues that lie within, they tend to be ill-defined and complex. And sometimes we think about the crises and we try to, for example, you're in university and you get impacted by the pandemic. You then worry about how you're going to pay for student loan and so on. But one of the points Colonel Waddington raised earlier in a discussion, which sort of gives a peek into the sort of complex understanding, and it ties back to the economy. How many of us are willing to take the option of waiting out a year and take care of the family and not worry about university and doing the things that are really hard decisions? Because at the end of the day, when we talk about security, we have to ensure that the critical and life-threatening dangers are kept at bay. And so the life-threatening danger of having your entire family disrupted is something that you have to make a hard decision on. And we have to begin to see the difference in the philosophy. And that's what yesterday's panel highlighted, which we need to remember.
And today we also were reminded that agility is very important. We have to be agile. We can't be static. We have to be able to move. And we have to, I always tell young people with whom I come in contact, I said, you have many talents. It's not just one thing that you can do. So, I have to go to examine what are the other things. May I just read some stuff in the chat here? This is Gwyneth saying, Reverend Lewis is underscoring the importance of character building spaces within communities. And that is a big discussion that will take a 3-day symposium in its alone, character building spaces within communities. And the key policy recommendations for economic group, move to digital economy now, relook the way we educate our children. I'm telling you, a mix of traditional and technology. That's a blended learning that we need to have. Establishment of mini task forces with mix of government and civil society, with input from women. Yes, please. Remember me raised a point earlier on? Okay. Breakthrough leadership that looks at creating a new picture of Jamaica. Focus must also be placed on diversification, agriculture, cannabis, gig economy, blue economy. And if there's anybody joining, maybe some young people, blue economy has to do with the marine. Blue, see, all right? And the gig economy, you do gigs. In our business in entertainment, we do gigs. We move from one gig to the other. We do one play and then another. All right, so that's there. And there is another, Lisa, thank you. All of our industries have an ecosystem attached to it. So, Achu, okay?
Could I just say one thing, Faye?
Yes, this is Lisa.
Yes, this is Lisa.
I'm going to ask you to put the lid on this part of the discussion, and then we move into health after. Go ahead.
Okay, right. So I'm going to give you an example of entertainment, extraordinary thinking, and not being, bogged down by what the world says. Everybody, I would like you to understand, last week, Saturday, we were one of the first in the world to open spectator racing at Caymanos track. How did that happen? We got a stakeholder group together that represented jockeys, grooms. We did it in the epicenter, St. Catherine. I think it needs to sink in. We got people to understand masks are unavoidable. We got them to realize that we had to deal with stigma. So in other words, a groom needs to understand he should be able to come forward to his trainer to say, here's what is happening at home. We got the Ministry of Health to participate with us, and we got it done in record time. And as a result, we got entertainment restarted. People came through the gate with masks. They were able to have some fun. They were able to bring an economy which has 4,000 direct workers and 20,000 in this ecosystem. So I just wanted to demonstrate that we have the ability to have extraordinary thinking, extraordinary actions, and extraordinary outcomes for Jamaica that the world cannot dictate for us.
Indeed. How did you deal with the physical distancing?
So what we did was we went through and we marked off spaces in the stands. So they had 6-foot spaces, and you have to wear your mask in the stand. There are some lovely pictures, Faye, I would share with you. We had to do that, but we also made sure that we had security marshals and manage a change. And we demonstrated we had a vision, a perfect day one. And if everybody was committed to a perfect day one, everybody had something to lose. But I would just say, look on the records. We did it before, Churchill Downs. We did it before Ascot. We did it before all of those places right here in Little Jamaica.
And we need to let the world know that we did it. Of course, Lisa, there's something that I don't think you've told us about. I mean, when a man say has a win, and it got how much odds to one.
Well, that's a hard.
Mask and dash it away.
Well, that is a training we did from when we did the week 1 to week 2. We have an idea for it. This week we have an idea, and it has to do with getting the spirit of the Jamaican. So the leg up when you get a jockey on the horse, when the commentator says, and they're off, mask up. Let's see if that works. We just have to try these things, Faye. It's emotional. That's a mix of things.
We just connect with it, right? I'm glad I share the story to speak about that, because people would want to know what when they get excited, what do they do? So, and do you use any media at all in terms of billboards or handouts or social media messages to them to remind them that this is what
we did everything, but I think we have to do all media. I think this several, which is Racing Entertainment Limited, they have to really try and get it out using mass media. They had prepaid tickets. They're now charging. People are lining up. They come in, they have to wash their hands. And I'm saying that all of these ideas is pulling it together. So I think the commentator now, looking on the energy that comes up with Jamaicans, mask up, and let's see how that works.
Of course, and the commentator can do his commentary or her commentary.
Yeah.
Women commentators at horse racing.
Anyway,
when the race
it's just a proxy.
The mask up and the mask is off, and here the mask is up and the mask is on, and here comes the mask to 10 furlong. And
So I think the idea is to just share the proxies that we have as examples, because it is possible. That's the only thing I'd want to say. And all of what Dana listed were the things that we discussed and more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. All right, so we're going to health. And yesterday, Professor Christopher Charles spoke about the dysfunctional families, and every society has them. It's not unique to Jamaica. He spoke about needing to know professionals who grew up in inner cities and who are professionals, and use them to help inspire others. The business of a multifaceted approach that is required, and I know that Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis has also always felt this way. Everybody understands that this is necessary. But let us talk a little bit about health and how the whole thing comes together, how we respond in a time like this when there's COVID-19. By the way, I'm 67, and the first time the second time I'm coming out to do something, call this live, and the one I did before was recorded. I have not even done a profile program for 4 months. So you will notice in the last 3 to 4 weeks I've been repeating programs, because at 67, then they tell us that we've done our yard. But we have issues with that. There are some people who are 67, yes, and we may have underlying issues, but we are taking care of ourselves. We also have elderly parents that we need to take care of. My mother is 92. And if I can't work, I understand that the government is trying to protect me. But if I can't work, can you see what the ripple effect is? I don't know who wants to take that on, who wants to start. I know that we have Lieutenant Colonel Powell is here. So let's have a chat. Lieutenant Colonel Powell, I want to ask you to join the discussion, and anyone else would like to comment on what I have just said or any aspect of health. But the elderly, and by the way, I don't believe I'm elderly. That's another big issue. I think my mother at 92 is elderly. I'm senior and I'm mature, but that's another story. So, Lieutenant Colonel Powell, are you there? No, Lisa.
I'm here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, I'm here. Afternoon. Everybody hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, my colleagues, and I refer to everyone as my colleagues, seeing as this approach to COVID-19 will involve all. I'd best start where we define health, with its physical, mental, and social components. And of course, all three are inextricably linked. Also, health is linked to security and the economy. And as such, it is important to define what national health security actually means. But before I go there, I'd probably just briefly just address the issue of a system. Social economic systems, COVID-19 or natural disaster. So basically, what we look at is the addressing of immediate concerns, and these might be vulnerable groups. When we go about quarantining persons at home, for example, or even isolation where we are now, what sort of psychological services that we have, support services, a purpose on approach to deal with longer term issues that the pandemic will highlight, such as the security economy. Short-term issues, identify people, and you were spoken earlier about the elderly. I'm getting there as well, but I'm not elderly, certainly. Children, those with disabilities and the disadvantaged in society. And here's where the social determinants of mental health become important. Certainly, how these measures will to help them impact on others, and of course, noting the difficulty, the trade-off between health, economy, and the social implications and other goals. Longer-term issues, certainly, the need of an approach that reacts to the origins and that will impact major shocks in the policies that we hope to implement are not effective. So I'd like to move on to now to the whole issue of national health security. Actions to protect psychological health, limit economic losses, and preserve confidence in the government and national and the nation. So I'll leave it at that with regards to the definition, but more on the issue of resilience, because that's where I think we need to focus. And this is basically our ability to do four things: anticipate, absorb, recover, and adapt. So if I get a little bit granular on the medical side, that's because I'm a medical person. But certainly what we need to look at certainly would be 6 factors. And I'm going to go hardcore here. 1, prevention. A few. You would have mentioned earlier the issue of agriculture. I'd like to throw into that mix the issue of diseases that can be transmitted from animals to human beings, biosecurity, biosafety. On the issue of detection and reporting, that's number 2. The issue of our laboratory systems. At an initial sore point was the testing, real-time surveillance and reporting, and data integration between the veterinary services. Thirdly, our rapid response, meaning our emergency preparedness and response planning, exercising those plans. Didn't think we had enough time to do that. Emergency response operations, the health system. I'd like to address just two key points here with regards to the health system. There are other parts. One, the capacity of the system to really to deliver the care that we were slated to deliver, and two, how we protect healthcare workers, and not necessarily physical protection, but remember psychological protection or mental health protection as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
of course, our compliance with international norms, cross-border agreements, international commitments, and a critical one, financing. And certainly when you start to divert money to COVID-19 response, what we found out was that will undoubtedly suffer, right? For example, persons with chronic lifestyle-related illnesses. And lastly, I just mentioned the risk environment, the political and security risks, socio-economic resilience, infrastructure adequacy, and most of our presenters would have addressed some of these or nearly all of these critical issues. I won't take up much more time, only to say one other thing. In terms of the way forward, I believe it is important for us to have some indicator or some way we can measure this response or resilience, if we can do that. But certainly measures would be good to see how we gauge our response, and more so on the health side, seeing as that is my side. But again, all three areas cannot be, it's difficult to separate them. You can't be healthy without an economy. You can't have an economy without healthy people. So that's my small input.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Powell. Let me ask you this. I don't know if you heard the news today. All of you have been very involved in this symposium, but from earlier on today, there was news that I can't remember if it was 5 or 7 persons in West Kingston, about 100 medical associated persons have gone in because 7, I believe it is, have tested positive for COVID-19, and that was related to one person who returned to the island recently from overseas. So a quick response to this question from you or anybody else who would like to comment on it, or a quick comment. Do you see a spike happening in Jamaica?
Well, I wouldn't say a spike, no. I think we're still going through this initial phase. We could only speak to a spike when things would have leveled off. And having leveled off certainly would have gone below what we would call that high number of reported cases. I don't think we are there yet in terms of that.
The use of spike is wrong. Maybe what I should have said, do you see a wave coming later on? Because when Diana spoke earlier on, people are wearing their masks. I have to move. My mother is in the country, so I have to go down to take care of her needs. And you pass through communities. When I get to the crossroads, because every district have a crossroads, the people are sitting there in the bars. They're sitting on the bankside. Them run a river or wash a car. And even in the corporate area, people are moving around without their masks. So, and physical distance, and may I just make this point? Physical distancing is not possible for many people who live in close communities. I like to call them that, right? Physical distance is not possible. But based on what we're seeing, and this information that came today, about West Kingston, and the news said about 100 people involved in the medical side of things in there looking and testing. What do you see it looking like in another 2 or 3 months?
Well, definitely the numbers are going to go up. For reasons, that's how I'm reading it. One, due to the persons who are coming back and the fact that we would have opened up for business, and certainly persons who would have had this fear that you would have mentioned earlier, who would have stayed home, and based on what is happening now, who would want to come out now to engage mix. Remember, they would not have had it, even for some who would have had it and would have recovered. So these susceptible persons now would now get the infection. So we are going to see an tick in the numbers, the extent. I can't speak to the extent. Certainly, if we think of what we call herd immunity, what that speaks to, and I'll use an example. If you have 4 persons and they stand together having a discussion, 3 would have had it, would have recovered, right? And therefore the likelihood of them getting it would be diminished. So that one person who would be in that infectious period and would spread it, it would not be possible for him or her to now spread it because those 3 other persons would have had it. So basically that's herd immunity. But the issue with that, what they're saying, and that will happen in the absence of a vaccine. So we can appreciate that until we get a vaccine where we can inoculate the entire population, what will happen over this time is that the virus is not going to sit down. It's not going to sit and say, look, I like Colonel Powell, I won't infect him, for example. It's not going to sit. What will happen, it will keep infecting persons until we reach about 70 to 80% of the population now who would have contracted the virus, but not necessarily exhibit, well, the clinical features will be on a range, basically from mild to no symptoms to probably mild, moderate, and the severe cases.
Sir, we have a comment here I want to share. We will see a surge, and therefore we must address the reach and agility of testing to match the policy changes. And the person, this is Lisa, we will see a surge, and therefore we must address the reach / access and agility of testing to match the policy changes. And mask compliance is imperative. Now I want to share something else we don't know. Our security forces are stretched as far as I'm concerned. And when I see some people turn up at 20 to 10 to go to a party when they occur at 10, and this is 1 or 2, and they are mainly young men and some young women, and nobody is wearing a mask, and this is, I'm speaking now from what I saw myself. Nobody is wearing a mask, and they're all walking and, backslapping and the chat and tarnat. I can just see what will happen because they are going to homes. They're going home. And some of those homes have people who are senior citizens, mature people, or the elderly. I can just see the ripple effect. The police and the soldiers can be everywhere. I know that. So I don't know what else we are going to have to do to get it across to young people who believe that it can't affect them and they must still have their entertainment, and nobody can tell them what to do. I'll just leave that there. Is there anybody else with a comment at this time on the health matters?
I have one. Oh,
let me go to Brigadier. All right. Brigadier, let me just go to first. Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis first, and then I'll come back to you, sir. Yes.
Thank you. A few quick things. I think public education campaigns need to be looked at because part of health and resilience is messages. So where I am, I'm at a place called Wolfville in Nova Scotia, and they have put up just some little signs with little messages to give you a pep and to increase your mental health. We know research has been done years ago on radio from Dulcimina time and afterwards about the effectiveness of radio. So I wonder if some of these mental health and physical health campaigns, things around distancing, can different sectors who have access to the media put out messages so that people can hear it on their church radio program, people can hear it on GIS, people can hear it different places. But I think we haven't done, there may be more that can be done to keep the message out there and to have what one friend called a redundancy of information. So if you don't get it on the swings, you get it on the roundabout. And don't leave
Let me just say this very
spirituality
quickly.
out of health.
Say it again.
I said it's important. Is that it is because spirituality can't be seen as readily as a vaccine. But do remember, Malcolm X was a criminal, and his conversion to Islam in prison meant something totally different happened to his life. There is work done by Pauline Milburn Lynch some years ago, the Grace Kennedy Lecture, and she said in terms of psychosocial resilience, spirituality is the one factor that can override everything else. The poverty, the poor socialization, all of that. That's in the Grace Kennedy Lecture, and that was some time ago. So I just want to encourage us not to leave it off and to repeat what I said yesterday, that in a number of societies, including Canada, where the government health service puts chaplains in hospitals, paid hospital chaplains. And I functioned as such. We are part of the team that reviews clinical cases, and it makes for a good delivery of service to the patients. Okay, so
thank you for that. Just before I bring in Brigadier Raj Mason, Marjorie, and Marjorie's my sister friend, so I call her Marjorie. Radio is powerful, we know that. And however, the young people, you can only, the people of 40 and under, you're going to reach them on social media. So it's a mix of media that is important, you know.
But the pages have different messages out.
Yes.
Not just in the symposium.
And by the way, no, the security forces need to see, and the health and the government need to monitor what's happening at bars, because what I'm talking about, Marjorie, you know exactly the locale I'm referring to. What I'm talking about is a party was happening at a bar. Okay? All right. Brigadier?
People have to eat a food.
Thanks again, Faye. I just want to do two things quickly. I'm going to reference the issue of poverty again, and as it affects now, as we zero in on the issue of health. Now, the resilience is really the capacity of a large percentage of your population to survive in this adverse times. And the capacity to survive, if you look at in the US and certainly in Jamaica, it is the persons who are so challenged with poverty that are most at risk. When we spoke about dieting, when we spoke about being able to survive the next, not having the next paycheck or having a clear paycheck at all, not having when you look at the resources, we're talking about their income. About 571,000 persons would have been plunged below the poverty line. And these are people who are self-employed primarily and who are on the edge of the poverty line. So you're talking about their source of income. They have to go and work. They are not necessarily listed to get a refund from the government. They are in the informal sector. And so they go and they get exposed. They have to get exposed because they have to earn. When they talk about their housing, they don't have, the houses are densely populated. They don't have the capacity to quarantine persons in a room, for example. They don't necessarily have savings that they can draw on. A lot of our impoverished persons rely on remittances from overseas in order to survive. And so because of these issues and because we know that our vulnerable population that we will need to protect, the measures that we have to consider, clearly we have to assist as much as possible with resources, with masks, with places to provide quarantine services. We have to assist with replacing income or to create the environment. For example, spending the resources. When you look at our markets, they are in an atrocious conditions. We need to provide the resources so that even if people go to the markets, they are sufficiently spaced and they have the requisite facilities to create an environment for them to earn. So I just wanted to raise this quick issue again of poverty and the fact that it is those persons, a good near 600,000 members of our population who do not have the capacity, and we will have to assist as much as possible to prevent a spread. Downtown, you'll find they are not wearing masks. You go uptown, you see a lot of people wearing masks. And so these are some of the issues I wish to add to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Let me ask you, Brigadier, why do you think they are not wearing masks downtown?
Well, you know, I recall one person was interviewed, and he flatly said that, look, that is an uptown thing. He has to survive. That was his comment. And I don't think
somebody else I heard who was interviewed said we have to dead sometime.
Yes. And so it is not for us necessarily to discard the comments. We have to listen very carefully. Exactly. In order to be able to treat with that, because it both has to do with providing, educating the population in the language that they will accept, and also, as I indicated, providing the resources to alleviate the conditions in those spaces.
Let me share with you with Lisa's comments. Lisa says we also have to incorporate mask breaks and breathing breaks. It is hot and we need to train them too, especially in the workplace. You have to come out and get some fresh air. You have to do that because, I mean, I don't know how long you've kept these things on for, but really it is hot and it is, and Lisa is reminding us, especially for the JCF and the JDF, they just need 6 feet to take the break. So step aside and take the break and breathe some air that is not coming from under the mask, and breathe, she's reminding us, because breath is the foundation of life. Huh? I want to just stay with the mask for a little while. I went to a petrol station shortly after this COVID thing started, and a young lady who was attending to me, she looked extremely tired, stressed, and the rest of it. And again, it could come back to poverty. And I engaged her, and I said, "Do you have your mask?" And she said, "Let me go home, I'll go buy one." So I gave her some money, and I said, "Buy one, right? Or buy something to make one." Let me ask you this: what if we made some masks available downtown? What do you think would happen, Brigadier and Lisa and whoever?
That would be great. That would be good.
Oh, yes, I fully endorse that. In fact, the case studies, I don't know if it was this conference or another, but there are case studies that show, actually, I think it was Terry Williams, who he actually showed there was a case study of a particular area in America where they gave masks to everyone and they used the philanthropy to make sure everybody had it. So again, Faye, the extraordinary idea that every Jamaican should have a mask. If we want to make that happen, that can happen there next week.
Exactly.
So, and then what you do is you encourage people, and we're going to need a Miss Kitty kind of snazzy thing on social media. We're going to need the radio. We need to get to everybody to recognize we have to work and we have to wear a mask. If we don't work, we can't eat. If we don't do this and make the connections. A lot of times in our communication and change management, we don't really explain the why. And everybody needs to know that. How are we going to send our children back to school if they have COVID? And so I think I think everybody is saying it. We can't live in a silo anymore. This is one of those. We have to whistle and ride. We have to make sure education and health talking, health and business talking. Government is breaking down their own silos, and we have to be practical. As I said, I see it. People are getting too caught up also with the mask. You can't have a JDF soldier out there in the hot sun. Nobody's around him and have the mask on. You take the mask down and take some air. So I think a lot of that has to be our realization that we have to make Jamaica work. Wear our mask, go to work. You mentioned older persons. First of all, Jamaicans are very strong-willed. My mother at 88, she left my sister's house and said, I'm going back to my house. You can tell me when COVID is over. So all we have to do is work around her, make sure she always has her mask on, and then she's insisting on going to the supermarket, so I walk behind her with the wipes. But people have to live, they have to be productive, and a lot of times we need them to get online also to even help with education and reading and all of that. So we have to get more.
I'm so glad you raised this matter about your mom, because in the case of my mom, there are two caregivers, one on off, and the community people. Me just tell her, I told the caregivers, when she goes out to the veranda in the mornings, she like to go right up to the grill, bring her back some more. Because people, we don't know fence on my yard, or my country. So people, Miss Near, and she have to engage because she's very much alert. She needs to know. So anyway, I'm glad you raised this thing about your mom, because there are so many elderly people, because they have been told that they must stand at their yard, are suffering from loneliness.
And loneliness kills. That's one of the biggest things with old persons.
I thought, because I was processing one, and I suffering from loneliness. And this is a time now where Professor Gwendolyn Abel spoke about persons in nursing homes. I'd like to add persons in infirmaries, slightly different, and persons who live alone. And so what I have done, I just say a prayer, and I go to visit this person every 2 or 3 weeks, but I call with my mask. I'm gonna make sure I did carry and deliver.
Open the windows, go on the veranda, take a walk outside. Breeze is helping us.
You understand? But it is going to kill a number of our elderly who are living alone and who may not be as mobile as others. So we have to think about these things. I know it's a tough one for the government. I mean, I'll say it easy, but all of us have to come together to help each other. And I just want to go back here, because when Professor Wendell Abel spoke yesterday too, to link back to what Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis was saying, he spoke of the elements of spiritual, psycho, and emotional, and a major existential crisis about death and dying. Because you see, when we heard the news and we saw all the footage and the stories coming out of places like Italy and France and America, and people that are dead, then some people are really very concerned about dying. Who is that I see up there? Lisa, you want to say something about that? So people are worried about dying.
Yes, and I think
COVID-19.
You remember the fear, we said this is really a leadership issue, and the fear is gripping. So as a coach, and there are people who are more and more qualified than me on it, we have to kind of get people to recognize, we have to look on the data. So I didn't even know about Italy till I flew through Milan and came back to Jamaica, and then the public health nurse was able to tell me, and she was more concerned about me getting malaria in India. The reality is that we are not having the deaths they are having. Maybe the fact that we don't have the money for the AC, every window is open. So I will have no hesitation to go to a jerk center outdoors than a small closed air-conditioned area. And I think our data does not show, and the doctor can say this, we're not showing that level of death, and we're also protecting our people in a much more proactive way than a lot of countries who followed us, and they're more developed. So it's a combination of things, and I think we have to recognize that we can do both, but the fear of that is what held people back from sharing information, making decisions, and so on. No, as I said to you, I don't look on the numbers anymore. I need to get people back to work safely.
Lisa, and I want to bring, I don't know if our doctor, Lieutenant Colonel Powell is still there. So you have the fear of the numbers, but you have fear of discrimination and stigmatization. If we get it, everybody in a community are going to shun me, or they might have become physical toward me.
We saw that in Portmore and Bull Bay. It is a fact.
Don't forget, early in the day, the guy was on the bus somewhere in Trelawney, and he went and then beat up the man. And even though the bus driver was saying to them, that's how he usually is. It may have a sinus grip or whatever it is. Beat him up and fling him off of the bus. So, and by the way, that kind of reaction is not only in Jamaica. Let me just read this very quickly, and please, I need to get some more input here. We go on till 4:15, right? It's Latoya, thank you so much. very important point, Latoya West Blackwood. Lack of compliance is not just downtown. There are also people who should know better spreading fake news, remasks, and hypoxia. Lack of discipline is a big enemy in this fight. So very true. So very true. And yes?
I may, I briefly just to comment on the issue of fear, and that is real. You know, that's real. And what we would have realized, just to bring everything together, the whole issue of not only misinformation but also disinformation, where that is now is just outright malicious, and we would have seen numerous examples: blow up the nose to kill the virus, etc., which will fuel this fear as well. But again, a low hanging fruit, even for elderly persons, which we sought early when we identified them, this high risk group, the follow on to that in terms of some resilient mental health, resilience building, and really to drive that now through policy. Once I believe that we get it in stone, then we can seek not only to care for them on the physical and on the social side, but also on the mental side as well.
Thank you for that. I don't know if anyone else has a comment they want to make on this area of health.
I could add, Faye, that sometimes also we think older persons won't adapt to technology. I have been to so many Zoom parties, and I have seen where people who wouldn't even be touching a tablet are on a Zoom party and they're watching. And these are older persons who, as you said, are kind of bound at home. So sometimes we think, oh, an old person won't get the technology. All we need is one young person to show them.
Exactly. And
more of that will help.
And this is a way to incorporate younger people into the life of the older person, which is show grandma how to use this thing. You have to be a little bit more patient, you understand? And, you know, out of this thing, you know, has come some really good things, like that family re-knitting. You know, Mark, I spoke about the loneliness of some people, but there has been a re-knitting in some families, a re-establishment of real family and sharing. So I tell people I have three kinds of friends. I have friends in my age group, but I have friends who are much older than I am, and I have been very careful to cultivate friends who are 15, 20 or more years younger than I am, because there are things that they can share with me or expose me to that, Mark, you know, sometimes they're a little, they're surprised that I am involved with technology, yeah, and that, so, oh, you know, but the point is they can help you to do things. So we need to have that kind of integration that is critical during this period. I wanted to ask us to very quickly look at Professor Beckles. He made a comment, and Lisa, I'm certain, and Dan is there still. In his presentation, he spoke about that this is phase 2 of Jamaica's nation building process. And he spoke about 3 things: the role of education for all, the social upliftment, and the economic reform. The role of education for all, social upliftment, and economic reform. And of course, those things would in some way address the marginalization that so many people experience. And he says it's time for a new guard, a new reset. So these are some of the things: security, sustainability, and sovereignty. I don't know who wants to maybe make some comments on this.
I'll chime in a little bit, Faye. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Oh, wonderful.
Ah, there you are. I thought you were gone.
No, I'm here. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving you. I think if we look at what Professor Beckles would have said, it is really tying everything that we've been trying to do in all these sessions together. None of these areas are disparate areas. They are all interconnected. And if we are going to see a different kind of Jamaica, this is a moment. And I really do think it's a moment, and we can choose as a people whether or not we want to go forward in a positive manner or we do not. Now, there are lots of things that are holding us back. Of course, we know education is one. The social dimensions have come out. Herbert Gale's presentation yesterday was absolutely fabulous. I hear you speaking about the mask and people not wearing masks downtown or in other areas. Remember that Herbert Gale, I linked it back to something he said where a lot of the individuals who he spoke to when he was talking about resilience, if you don't feel like you have a future 5 years down the road, then you don't care. And it's okay to take a life because the life isn't meaningful, because my life isn't meaningful. And so when you say to someone you need to wear your mask, if they don't feel like they're a part of something that's moving forward for them and they're a part of it, then they're not going to wear a mask. They don't care because society, we have left them behind. And so it's a moment for us to stop and to take stock of what is this country that we have? How do we make this country more inclusive? It obviously is a lot of behavior change work that's necessary. Remember when we wanted to try to pull the population, now we did the 2 is better than too many campaign, and that was very successful, but it wasn't just a campaign. It was people going in communities. We can't just put a nice ad out, be on TV. The community interventions have to be an important part of that. And so as we look at this moment, we can't think of security or health or economics. It's whole of society. And how do we get our people moving in the direction we want to? And that comes from having a genuine care for people.
And understanding the culture, because you can't develop messages that will reach people and resonate and cause change unless you understand the culture. You made reference to 2 is better than too many. That clearly was not just drug out of a hat. Yeah. It was clearly thought through. You understand? Omar says he has to leave, but thanks for the discussions. Don't go away then, Dana. There's also, says Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis, there's also deep grief when the living can't have funerals and related gatherings as they did in the past. Now I'm going to share something, and I know Marjorie is going to say, yes, I know that is faith. One of the things, I see that, and I know that that is real. But then I look at it on the other side. You have to be agile with these things. That's about, there's so much money that people spend on a week or 2 weeks leading up to a funeral. I'm not joking now, to a funeral, that I say, but there is a plus side to this thing. Because people borrow money for bury people, you know. Right? And then have this thing every night, people, because it's not like 30, 40 years ago when people come to your yard and bring a tray of fried fish and some bread and some chocolate tea. You have to be providing all of these things. So in a sense, that loss that Marjorie speaks of is very real. But I see the other side to it. Marjorie, you're going to kill me, but you know, no such thing, Clark.
Same thing with weddings, Faye.
Yes.
Spend too much money on weddings.
So everybody vexed because you know invite them and they win, and you have this bill after you're married. Stupidly, if you do that, you understand? No, you have your wedding, and then you can't send a note on a picture to say, "I'm married." You know.
No, I won't kill you about that. I think that's real. But when you can't hug family members, or some critical people can't come. You know, there are people that I know who have died in Jamaica, and I've watched the live stream services. But it's a different thing when you can connect even with your family. So I would agree with you that some money is being spent, although some entrepreneurs have danced, and I've heard of people who have danced, pay dance, and actually make profit. But a lot of money is spent unnecessarily on funerals and weddings, and people don't think about the marriage, they think about the wedding. So I would agree, but the lack of the ability. I had one relative who the youngest brother died, and she said what she so appreciated is that they gave them chance. It wasn't COVID, it was something else, but she appreciated, and her siblings, the opportunities to go in to wash his body, to dress him, you know. So it's not just a crowd. But here we have had in Canada a number of retirement homes that have had a lot of deaths, and it has been very painful because people were barred from going in before and are left with the sense that their loved one died alone, probably not well cared for, and did they make the right decision to put them in a home? So I would agree that there are both things, but it's rough when you're going to your home and you're waving to grandma through the window, or you can't even go there. All right, so yeah, so that's what I would say on that.
I appreciate those comments. Major Blackwood, it gone? Oh, it was he's making a, okay, I see that. That was private there. Okay. We are collecting.
Auntie Faye, I'm still here.
Yeah, you had a comment that you wanted to share?
Oh no, I was just reminding of the fact that when we thought about the whole matter of resiliency, we broke it down into 3 components. And the first aspect is that whole stress inoculation piece, because a range of crisis scenarios and issues in our society will get us inoculated, and it will get us in a state of mind that it hits very deeply on the psychological plane, and then that can have some deep effects on the physical plane. If you are stressed out, if you are worried about the issues happening around you, you might do things that are not within your normal disposition to do. And that is where the resiliency skills come in. It applies to organizations, individuals, any level you can think of. But that third component of managing fear, it was very critical in our deliberations when we thought about this. And I was very happy to hear the range of perspectives about how we can collectively look at managing fear and having people understand that, listen, there's always tomorrow. If you become afraid in a situation, you freeze up, and that affects survival at the very core. So that is very important in discussion.
And that's at the very core of your training.
Absolutely. We need to train the entire country in that regard.
Yes. Yesterday, Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis spoke about the multiple traumas that people are experiencing. We've been discussing some of them here. So you have the trauma of being alone, the trauma of getting the disease, the trauma of not getting your remittance because there's somebody overseas who was working, no longer working, the trauma of underlying conditions. We are in problems. Some people are in more problems than others. How do we assist? We have about 6 minutes left in this section. Not hearing my regulars.
I just wanted to also add another trauma too, if I could, which is also the unemployment rate is going up in Jamaica. It's not a great economic picture that we face, and the trauma is real. And we also have lots of latent trauma from crime in many of our communities. There are people who are walking around traumatized. I say that a lot of the violence we see in Jamaica is because of pent-up trauma. And we already have the stigma attached with getting support, counseling support, or mental health support in our country. And this is a moment where we're all hurting. And so we have to look at what mechanisms can there be. There is a suicide hotline. Maybe we need to not call it a suicide hotline, but having mental health lines that you can call and speak to someone and have counselors on tap to talk through some of these things and destigmatize it and having it be seen as normal, because there is so much trauma, even with children. When I have an 8-year-old look at me and say, will I ever see my friends again? I mean, children really shouldn't be asking questions like that. And our teenagers who had all these dreams for the world and just seeing the world fall apart, it's traumatic.
You know, you're so right. I can't remember where I was, and somebody raised the point. It could have been, oh, we had at my church a discussion and about families living with COVID-19, and I think it could have been Lynette Bass who raised, or somebody. Imagine you can't even go out and date. You can't date, a youngster can't date. Meet somebody, go have ice cream. You see what I'm talking about? And so that 16, 18, 20, you see the trauma there. You understand? And so some of them just want to eat anyway in terms of date. And then we have some other challenges. So we have 4 minutes left.
I wanted to just add on the trauma side, and all of those angles are so right. And we've never seen grief in the way, even with death, right? So that is a unique space we've never been in. But I think there is an element of communication that would help us. And I always wondered, how come, we need to hear more messages. We need more of the MPs on the ground, going door to door, touching base with families and acknowledging and validating them, because I can't picture it, but people used to say that the North Coast was a ghost town, Ocho Rios. And if you do drive down to Ocho Rios, you realize that it's not that far from that description, because that is a bustling town with the cruise ships and people are moving around and there's economic activity and tourism workers have more energy because they're service-oriented workers visible to us. I think we need people to be going out now at every level, the household, the community, the church, the constituency level. We need to go out there and talk to them about what options they have. Maybe you go back to the country, take the 2 children, come back in September when school starts, because at least you can get breadfruit and yam and banana down there. You can't stay in a city jobless, bills mounting, tension in a 3-bedroom or 1-bedroom or a yard. You can't, and things don't fall apart.
Exactly.
So we need those options.
I thank you for that, because I've often thought that some people who have, because sometimes they don't have anywhere to go back to, but those who have somewhere to go back to and they have no work now need to go back there. You just dig up some plot of land and start putting in some lettuce that is now $1,000 a pound. You understand? No, seriously, and some calendar and so on. And as you say, breadfruit and those things.
I mean, as a townhouse, we have a garden, and a security guy came to the house yesterday. There's 4 of us in the townhouse, and he saw our little patch, and I've had so much food from it over the last 4 months. And he said, I'm so inspired. I live in Portmore. I always wanted to do this. I'm going home this weekend to start a vegetable patch.
Do me a favor, please, Lisa. Anybody who wants to start, please tell them about the 4-H movement. I can't help it. I will
look it up.
I'm patron for the Clarendon 4-H Club, okay? They teach you all of these little things.
Thank you.
Saying, I feel it for the teens and the young adults. I'm telling you, Gwyneth, me feel it today. What a good thing I became a teen in the 60s. Papa. All I was dealing with in the 60s was Black Power and them. That was a different kind of pandemic. Anyway, and let me see here. There's Marjorie saying we need to make everybody feel valued. Yes, we need to make everybody feel valued and hopeful for life. I heard a male voice, and if this male voice is going to speak,
just a quick note.
I'm coming to you, Lieutenant Colonel. Let me just read this, then I'll come to you, and then I put the final lid on. Looking forward to the extraordinary outcome, says Latoya West Blackwood. Well done to the organizers, speakers, and panelists. Public comments indicate that such a symposium was indeed necessary and is timely, as many adjust to the diverse roles being played by the JDF and other key partners. Sir, is supposed to come out at 4:15. You have 30 seconds.
Well, I'm certain that we can all agree that there is no health without mental health. And yes, we would have changed the name of Ministry of Health to Ministry of Health and Wellness. And I'm leading to mental health wellness. And it is essential for mental health professionals to provide that necessary support, and that can be coordinated through the Ministry of Health, especially for those who are vulnerable. And we would have identified those persons to include also those who are infected with the disease or who are ill, their families, colleagues, even persons with pre-existing mental health issues as well. So that's my 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you know, the late Professor Fred Hicklin did say enough of we have pre-existing mental health conditions. All right, let me just thank everyone for participating. Panelists, contributors, special speakers, but I want to thank the team from the Jamaica Defence Force. Some of them are in this room with me, others are in the room downstairs. It would have taken quite a bit of planning and teamwork to pull this off. We know the expertise of the JDF in planning and getting things executed, but I wanted to, for them to extend to Lieutenant General Rocky Mead and all the others who saw this as something that was necessary and executed. Before we go, what do we need to do? We need to survive and ultimately thrive. In order to do that, we must adapt. It's time to look at the larger picture, and I would say also a different picture. Crisis is the new norm. Will we be in perpetual crisis? Agility is the order of the day. Therefore, we have to move from our old ways of thinking and of being and become innovative. The digital society is here to stay, and there is need for a new guard, a reset, says Professor Sir Hilary Beckles. For Jamaica, we are in phase 2 of nation building. When we speak of education, we must also include digital literacy. We must trust and create reasons and opportunities for people to trust, and we must be responsible in our behavior choices. So we must wear our masks, we must keep our physical distancing, we must wash our hands and wash it properly, and we must say thank you for your contribution. God bless you. Walk good.
Thank you.
That's from me, but guess what? It's
Thank
not
you. Thank you.
You too.
somebody has, thank you for those comments, Lisa.